People who demand the rain to be turned off, people who blame ride operators for breakdowns, people who tell their kids to pee in the corner. All of these annoying guests and more right here on Theme Park Crazy. Last year, we discussed 10 things not to do at a theme park. This video was inspired by the work of YouTube user Sir Willow, who has repeatedly discussed his experience as a theme park worker. Today, we're going to do something similar and look at some of the strange and sometimes annoying things you may have seen guests do at theme parks. These will include a couple things from my previously mentioned video, but with some added details. Anyway, this goes out to all of the park guests and park workers out there who have had to deal with guests like these. Here are the top 10 most annoying theme park guests as voted on by the viewers. Number 10. People who ask boneheaded questions. Anyone who's worked in a theme park or some kind of guest service can agree that there are some truly bizarre questions out there. Now, none of this applies to simple questions like where's the bathroom, where's first aid, or where's this ride. Rather, this applies to questions that you wouldn't think are common, but sadly are. For context, here are just a few specific examples of questions that will leave you dumbfounded. Let's say you're working at Magic Kingdom in Florida, and someone comes up to you and asks, "Where is Harry Potter World?" The idea that someone could spend thousands of dollars on a Disney World vacation and just assume the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is there is just baffling. To be clear, the Wizarding World is actually at the Universal Orlando Resort. Then you have the parents who go up to workers and ask, "Can you watch my kid for me while I'm on the ride?" The fact is that employees are not responsible for your kids, and if you're at a park, it's your responsibility to supervise your own child. Finally, we have perhaps the most infamous dumb question of all time. What time is the 3 o'clock parade? Think about that question and just how dumb it is. And yes, this question is apparently asked all the time at Disney World. This is the equivalent of asking what day of the week Friday the 13th is. The frightening part is that a lot of people ask this in earnest, as if there's actually a parade called the 3 o'clock parade. And of course, there are people who ask this jokingly, but to those people, you have to understand that cast members have heard this phrase so many times that it's no longer amusing. So even if you're not being serious, asking this question is something you don't want to do because it will only annoy the employees. Number 9. People who walk where they're not supposed to. Let's say there's a garden with a path going around it. Suppose there's a guest here who wants to get here. Instead of taking the path around to get there, they'll just go right through the garden and stomp on the defenseless plants. If real life was the happening, the plants would certainly get revenge on them. Imagine how annoying it is for the gardeners and landscapers to have people constantly stepping on their greenery. This also applies to the wannabe influencers who walk into the gardens to take selfies. Another place guests walk where they shouldn't is the back rooms, or the employee-only areas in general. As much of a meme as the back rooms have become, they're still off limits to guests. A lot of times, employees will find guests wandering around back there, and the guests will say something like, "Oh, I was looking for Space Mountain," even though they're at Epcot. Then there are people who go back there on purpose for the sake of making a YouTube video or a TikTok post. As we discussed in my previous video, entering restricted areas will get you kicked out of the park and possibly banned. In this case, the clout simply isn't worth it, and it's not worth annoying the employees and the security guards. Number 8. People who demand the parks change the weather. I can say from experience that rain on your vacation absolutely sucks, especially with outdoor coaster-heavy parks. It could easily put a damper on your plans, and it's perfectly normal to get annoyed about the weather situation. The problem is that some people have a tendency to blame the employees for the weather, no joke. There are numerous stories out there of people storming into guest services and demanding that they do something about the weather, whether it's too hot, too cold, or raining. One story, which I'll link in the description, involved a guest at Disneyland going up to a cashier and saying, quote, "I demand you turn off the rain." The guest claimed that Disneyland had a weather dome that the cashier was refusing to put up. When the cashier explained that there was in fact no weather dome, the customer proceeded to curse her out, march over to guest services, and write on the complaint that the cashier refused to turn off the rain. Of course, this complaint was not taken seriously by management, but the scary part is that the manager told the cashier, "We get that a lot around here." Yes, there is an ongoing myth that the Disney parks have retractable domes to protect from inclement weather. Disneyland is 100 acres, much bigger than any football stadium. Disney may have a lot of money, but such a project would undoubtedly cost billions or even trillions. And why bother anyway when most of the rides are indoors? Truthfully, as awesome as theme parks can be, they cannot in fact control the weather. Number 7. People who are rude to costumed characters. I personally have a lot of respect for the character actors at Disney, both the fur and face actors. Back when I worked at a movie theater, I had to dress up as the company's mascot for a promotional event. And let me tell you, I don't think I've ever sweat more in my life than I did wearing that fursuit. The fact that people wear these costumes in the hot Florida sun speaks volumes to the amount of dedication they have to their jobs. So it's simply infuriating to hear how some of these characters can be treated sometimes. On a regular basis, costume characters have to deal with being grabbed and stepped on. And sure, small children don't really know any better, but the problem happens when parents think it's funny. So if little Monica kicks a character at Tomorrowland, instead of being reprimanded, her dad will just stand there laughing, thinking it's the funniest thing ever. In a more specific example, I heard of one incident at Chef Mickey where Piglet was followed by a butter knife wielding child, who kept saying her dad was going to turn Piglet into bacon, and her dad was no help as he kept calling Piglet bacon himself. And of course you also have those guys who go up to the princesses and ask them for their phone numbers, saying, quote, "What time are you off?" These people honestly think that the princesses are there to flirt with whoever they want. Disney actually had to change the outfits on some of their characters to discourage such obnoxious behavior. The same also went for the loincloth wearing Tarzan, who was removed from the parks entirely. Honestly, costume characters have to put up with so much BS, they deserve all the respect in the world. If you've worked as a character and are watching this video, major kudos to you. Number 6. People who harshly criticize and attack rides they haven't been on. If you're a coaster enthusiast, you probably see this online with every new ride announcement. It seems like no matter what a park announces for a new attraction, if it's anything less than a record breaker, it gets slammed by people. Take Orion at Kings Island for example. You may be thinking, how can people be upset over a 300-foot tall roller coaster that's over 90 miles per hour? Well, before it was announced, people knew that Kings Island was building a Giga, so there was speculation galore beforehand. Many suggested it would be even taller and faster than Fury 325. When the ride was announced though, it was revealed to be the tallest coaster at the park instead of the tallest Giga in the world. If you watch the official announcement at the park, you can actually hear collective groans of disappointment when this was revealed. Nevertheless, most people still highly anticipated the coaster as another amazing addition to the park. But of course, it was a bit of a different story online. Many accused Kings Island of, quote, cheaping out on the coaster, despite it costing the exact same amount as Fury 325. The structural height of 287 feet also led people to declare it was not a Giga, despite the drop itself being 300 feet, thus meeting the agreed upon definition. The fact is that the park's market research determined that going too high up would risk alienating many potential customers. All of this doesn't just go for Orion either though. Back when Yukon Striker at Canada's Wonderland was announced, the first thing many people did was lambast it. Because some people online were expecting a wing coaster, the announcement of a dive coaster was met with groans. Also, a lot of people assumed that the ride was going to be called Ziz because there are two other coasters named Behemoth and Leviathan, and it would fit into Hebrew mythology. Truthfully, from a marketing standpoint, a ride called Ziz isn't really that appealing to the general public. So when the name Yukon Striker was announced, a lot of people said the name sounded stupid because it wasn't Ziz. In addition to the vest restraints, the second half of the layout was also criticized for looking bland. But all of this was gathered from a single animated rendering that was posted online before anybody got a chance to ride it or before the track work was completed. Quite frankly, it's impossible to determine how good a ride is from the POV video. The only way to truly review it is to literally go out and ride it. Bottom line, don't judge a ride from its announcement. Number 5. People who smoke in non-smoking areas. Not much to say about this one since it's pretty straightforward. Needless to say, smoking is a dangerous habit that will literally turn your lungs into a symbiote septic tank. Even most smokers are well aware of this. Meanwhile, non-smokers generally hate the smell of cigarettes. That's why many parks have designated smoking areas. Even still, there are people who decide they can just puff smoke wherever they want. Sure, most parks are outdoors, but it's still quite annoying to get hit with a puff of cigarette smoke when you're just trying to enjoy your fried Oreos. The same goes for vaping too, and many consider vaping outside designated areas to be just as rude as smoking. Some even argue that there are vape scents that smell worse than cigarette smoke, Vaping is also a very dangerous habit. None of this is meant to shame people who are vapors and smokers, but if you're going to do either, please do it in an area that won't bother others. Number 4. People who blame the ride ops for downtime. If you've visited a park, you may have experienced unscheduled downtime, which is when a ride suddenly closes for an unspecified amount of time. This could happen for a number of reasons. Parts of the machine could wear out, there could be inclement weather, the computers could start acting weird, the proximity sensors can be on the fritz, among other things. It can admittedly be frustrating when it's a ride you really want to get on, but it's not something that the park can control. Roller coasters, dark rides, flat rides, and others are complex machines, and sometimes they need maintenance. The issue is when you have people who go up to the ride operators and pester them about what's wrong with the ride and when it's going to reopen. The truth is that ride operators typically have no idea what's wrong with the ride. Their job is simply to push the button to start it and make sure that everyone is safe and secure. The phrase technical difficulties can encompass a number of complex issues from mechanical to electrical. Regrettably, people will also pester the maintenance staff who are sent to make the repairs. Although maintenance does know more about how the ride works, they are working to get the ride fixed as quickly as possible and don't have time to chat. Definitely the most annoying thing about this are the guests who actually blame the ride operators or the maintenance staff for the ride being closed. Again, it's not their fault and ride shutdowns just happen. Simply put, it's a risk that everyone takes when they get in line for a ride. Number 3. People who use their phones on roller coasters and dark rides. Last year, we went into detail on people who insist on taking their phones on roller coasters. To me, these guests are more frightening than annoying, but are still annoying nonetheless. If that phone were to fall out of their hand, there's a good chance that I or someone else will get hit in the face and end up in the hospital. I've seen how brutal the injuries are for people who have been hit in the face with flying phones. Fortunately, as I've said before, there are many parks that will catch guests using their phone through cameras on the lift hill. They will then stop the ride on the lift hill, confiscate the phone, and kick the guests out at the end of the ride. Definitely some good karma there. Besides just roller coasters though, there's also people who take out their phones on dark rides. Admittedly, I have been guilty of this before, since taking footage on dark rides typically isn't against the listed rules. However, when you really think about it, taking out your phone on a dark ride is no different than taking out your phone in a movie theater. The bright light is extremely distracting to the people behind you, and it makes it much more difficult to see the scenery in darker set pieces. Imagine riding Dinosaur and having a phone in your face while you're trying to see the dinosaur animatronics that may or may not be working. If you're going to use your phone on a dark ride and it's not against the park's rules, definitely turn your screen's brightness to the lowest setting and keep it close to you. Number 2. Parents who let their kids urinate and defecate wherever. I really wish this wasn't a thing, I really do. But there are actually some parents out there who are too lazy to take their kid to a bathroom. It's not the fault of small children that they need the facilities at the drop of a hat. That's pretty much guaranteed to happen at some point if you're a parent waiting in line with their kids. What's really a problem is when parents who don't want to get out of line simply instruct their children to pee in the corner. This is just unsanitary and gross. Sir Willow also mentioned a story where a guest came up to him at Magic Kingdom and said somebody took a dump in Ariel's grotto. The entire area had to be shut down and decontaminated for over an hour, which was a huge pain to the janitors. It's dumbfounding that this even has to be part of this list. But you'd be surprised how flat out stupid some parents are. If your kid is faced with a bathroom emergency, let an employee know and they may let you leave the line and come back to where you were. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it's definitely more preferable to the alternative. Number 1. People who cut in line. You all saw this one coming. I know I went into this topic at length before, but it's really worth repeating. I honestly can't tell you how many times I've been to a theme park and was waiting in line for a roller coaster, only to have 4 or 5 people waltz their way to the front. Whenever I say, "Hey, what are you doing?" the response is, "Oh, our friends are up there." I'm sorry, but this is not an excuse to cut in line. It's understandable that big groups sometimes split up when they all want to do different things. But there are plenty of people who think that it's perfectly fine to have one person wait in line while they get some cheese fries or something, just so that they can cut in front of everyone else when they decide to get in line. Just because they wanted to eat something or ride something else doesn't mean they're entitled to skip the line. Even if it's only a couple of people, I can't think of anything more annoying than to have your time in line extended by some random line cutters. As mentioned before, this is not only annoying, but heavily against the rules. If security catches someone cutting in line, they'll kick them out, and rightfully so. There's one more note I want to add though. If you see someone getting on a ride at the exit, don't assume they're trying to cut in line. Many parks offer assistance passes for guests with disabilities. Unfortunately, I have seen people in line act like grade A jerks whenever someone gets to go to the front with one of these passes. Thankfully, they usually get chewed out. So what are some annoying things that guests do that get on your nerves? Feel free to leave a comment down below. And now it's time for the comment shoutout program. This is where I take 5 random comments from my previous video and read them out. These comments are from my top 20 best animatronics video. Mr. Fett says, I would love to see more stuntronics around the Disney parks. Matt YT says, the King Kong animatronic really made the ride in Orlando. I re-rode the ride just to get another look at it. My wife didn't understand why I really wanted to go back on it again so quickly. She just didn't get it. KSC says, my daughter Abby is 5 and is your biggest fan. She wanted to comment that her favorite animatronic was the Jaws ride in Japan. She really wants to be featured in your comment shoutouts one day. Thanks for watching, Abby. Coaster Enthusiast says, do a video of the most remote roller coasters in the world. And finally, Autumn RC1 says, the Star Wars animatronics are most impressive to me. When I saw Kylo in person, I was speechless by how fluid the movements were. If you want to see your words in my next video, leave a comment down below and it may be selected. Please note though that inflammatory or spam comments will not be read.
Thank you all so much, and if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so once again at the link in the description.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can check out my website at themeparkcrazy.com.
And I'm on TikTok, for reasons I'll explain in a pinned comment.
This is Theme Park Crazy, and I'll see you all next time.